So welcome back, guys. So today we will be seeing another interesting topic. Um, uh, Today, like where we'll start about exceptions. Okay, so we have written some code, and every time we write a code, right? So whenever we are using thread.sleep, right? Whenever we are using thread.sleep, something like this, right? And it is asking us to throw these exceptions. Okay, so let's say I remove them, and when I remove them, right? So if you notice, these are all exceptions that's happening. What is this? Unhandle exception, java.io.io exception, right? Add exception to method signature. More actions. If I go to more actions, it is telling surround with try catch block, right? Or you have to add exception to the method signature. The same way here, it is telling, hey, java.lang.interrupted exception, right? And see, it has some details as well, so you can also use try catch blocks to avoid them. So if I hover this mouse again, see, if you notice very carefully, causes the currently executing thread to sleep. Okay, we are asking the thread not to do anything for some time, right? And when we're doing this, subject to precision accuracy of the system timers and schedulers, the thread does not lose ownership of any of the monitors. Okay, so when you are trying to ask somebody to sleep, okay, they may sleep for some extended time, right? So they cannot be really sure that when they resume their work, they will do their work accordingly, right? So because in real world, not just one thread will work, right? So already we have seen what is multi-threading, which means multiple threads will process your program, right? So when we are making this thread to sleep, we need to maybe another thread comes and take over or do something that is not intended. Okay, so these kind of exceptions, people are telling, hey, whenever you're trying to make thread.sleep, there are chances you may you know end up in some kind of exceptions. Do you really want to do this? Okay, if you want to do this, okay, just add the exception to the method signature, right? So here also, when you're trying to copy a file, okay, it is telling, see, we are trying to copy a file, but when you're trying to read a file, IO means input output exceptions. Okay, you are trying to do something with the file, maybe reading and writing operations. Okay, at that time you may face some exceptions. Okay, maybe the file might not be present there, or while accessing the file, you may face access related issues. Maybe only the admin can move it from that project folder to another project folder, something like this. Okay, so Java doesn't really know whether you would be able to successfully move that file from one location to another location. Okay, so it is just highlighting you, there may be possibilities when you are trying to move this file, there may be a case where you may not able to do it. Okay, in this time, what you want to do. Okay, now I don't know what to do. Maybe at the time, what I can do, I will add a try catch block, and here I can mention uh, uh, maybe some out statements, problems while moving the file, something like this. Which means there is a block called a try. Okay, that tells we are giving the code that may cause problems into this particular block. Okay, if there is a problem, okay, you recover with this. Okay, you recover with this. Okay, this is what we are telling, but this looks very complicated, right? Let's take a very simple example and then understand this whole thing easily. Exception demo test. Okay, and let's start with the test and exception test, right? And here we will try to understand this with a very simple example. Maybe we'll start with, there is a number a is 5, okay, and there is a number that b is 0, and someone is trying to do let's say a by b. Okay, but now what will happen? So we are trying to divide a number 5, which is by 0, right? We are trying to do dividing operation. this will result in an infinite, right? So in a real time or undefined, right? So but that particular thing, undefined or infinite, is not in programming world. We don't have such things. Okay, when I try to run it, let's see what's happening. So we are getting something called as arithmetic exception. Okay, so you are trying to divide something by zero, you will get an arithmetic exception. And we also have faced one more thing. We have, let's say, we previously have an int array. Let's say it's having 2 comma 3. Previously we had this, right? So let's name it as C so that it won't collide. And here, when we try to access, let's say I'm trying to access C of 2. So C of 0 is 2, C of 1 is 3, but C of 2 is not even present. Okay. So let's see what will happen. Anyone can guess what kind of error it will throw?
Index out of bound.
Sorry?
Index out of
Index
bound.
out of bound.
Yes, we already understood this, right? Index out of bound. Okay. But why this time it's not telling any error? Okay. It is not showing or highlighting any error. But when we do file utils or maybe thread.sleep, while using itself, it is telling. Okay. When you try to use, it is telling, hey, solve this particular problem. Why this is not happening for these two things? Okay. When we are trying to do a divided by 0, it is not pointing it. When we are trying to do access of index that is not present, it is not doing it. Do you get can guess why it is not showing error for these two?
Runtime error.
Yeah, these are all runtime problems. Okay, so these are all compile time issues. Okay, so there are two kind of exceptions. Okay, exceptions are basically exceptions are kind of errors. Okay, they are not errors, but they are kind of errors. Okay, there are two kind of exceptions. Okay, one is checked exception, and another one is unchecked. Okay, people may also call this one as compile time exception and unchecked as runtime exceptions. Okay, so this thread.sleep is part of checked exception. Okay, so whenever you're trying to use it, it will ask you to define something. Okay, either you handle it with try catch block, or you do something with throw this to the method signature. But these are all runtime exception, because if you are trying to divide by 1, it won't throw error, right? So at the time it cannot even predict what is the value of b, right? So that's the problem. So now you can access one, you are not sure, the program cannot decide until you really pause whatever you want to find. So these are all runtime and can be only found during runtime. But these kind of exceptions are really checked exceptions, because it can be found using compile time. Let's understand this with another simple example in a real-time world. Whenever people are speaking about exceptions, imagine this example that you are entering an ATM. Okay, you are entering an ATM and you want to withdraw, let's say 800 rupees. Okay, 800 rupees, and you have say you have 500 denomination notes alone in this particular ATM. So, and you are trying to you are unaware of this, and then you are trying to enter let's say 800. Okay, what happens? What happens, guys, when you are trying to? Hello.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to understand the question. Can you repeat again?
See, you want to withdraw 800 rupees from an ATM. Okay, and the ATM has only 500 rupees. What happens?
Unavailable balance.
So 500 rupees denomination notes alone is there in the ATM. Okay, it doesn't have 100 rupees denominations. So different ATMs behave differently. Okay, there are some ATMs where, okay, it will clearly tell, okay, entered denomination is not available. Denomination is not available, and then it will ask you to uh, enter in terms of enter uh, in terms of in multiples of 500. Okay, multiples of 500, and then it'll ask you to continue. It'll not only throw the error, but also it will give you an option to continue the program. Okay, continue the program. Okay, continue and enter the new amount. Okay, there are some ATMs like this. Okay, and wait, this is still throwing it. Okay, so let's minimize this. Okay, and there are certain ATMs that doesn't do anything. It says something went wrong, something went wrong, and then it will end the program. In the program, and then there are certain ATMs that might tell um, uh, amount is invalid. Okay, something like this. So there are people, how they want to handle the exception is very important. Okay, so whenever there is a error occurring and how we want to recover from the error, that is called as exception. Okay, if there is a error, how we want to recover from this. Okay, let's say whenever this something is happening like this, or whenever I am trying to copy a file, uh, say I'll remove this. Okay, file utils dot, let's say, copy file, and then some location to some location I want to copy it, right? So in this case, maybe new file, just so I want to copy a file, right? So this time if there is an error occur, so if you just directly do this. Okay, let's see what's happening. Okay, I'm trying to run the program and see what's happening. So it is telling file is not found because there is no path given, valid path given. Okay, so file system element or parameter source does not exist, so you are getting some default error, but this is not really meaningful, right? Do you want to really show this to a bank customer who is trying to withdraw amount? So no, I don't want to do that. I want to give some meaningful names. Okay, so if you throw the exception, right, so if you throw some checked exception, okay, it gives default error message, but this time, okay, I want to give some meaningful error. And I want to again give them the chance to convert it. Maybe what I can do, so this is a piece of code that may cause errors, right? So what I can do, I can try to wrap them inside a try block. Okay, this try block is used to hold all the methods, see all the statements of lines that is having problems. Okay, now I'm trying to catch it. What kind of exception I want to catch? I'll just tell exception for now. And here I will just tell problem with the file path. Okay, or some really good meaningful messages I can give here. And more importantly, if there is an error occur, okay, it will come only if there is an error here. It comes and execute this piece of code, and it will continue with the program. Okay, it will continue with the program. I am the last line. Okay, now let's try to run it. See, if you notice, we're trying to still copy the file that is not really exist. This time we are not getting the old error message. This time the error is very clear, problem with the file path, and then we have recovered from the error. Okay, we are not only have given meaningful information, we have recovered from the error, and then we continue to execute the program. Okay, maybe will again in real case, maybe the bank customer will again ask them, okay, um, available denominations, we will tell them available denominations are 500. Okay, 500, 500 maybe 2000. Okay, only these are all available. Okay, so when we give them this, now we will again give them enter again amounts to withdraw. Okay, so when we give something like this, now when they are facing some problems, they clearly know what is the problem. Okay, the problem is with the denominations they entered, so they can continue with the program. Okay, this is how developers have coded. Okay, how the bank wants their requirements to be. So as a end user, I would expect something like this. Okay, I would not expect amount is invalid or something went wrong. Okay, I don't need this. Okay, I need a clear information on what is wrong. Okay, maybe I would have entered my password incorrectly, then it should clearly mention please enter correct password. Okay, so try catch is basically used to recover a, from an error. If you want to recover your program from an error, use a try catch block. But if you not really want to do that, okay, and you want to throw the exception, okay, then you can directly mention throws exception. Okay, so again, let's say I'm again trying to execute something here. I am after exception. What happens now? So this particular piece of code will execute or not? Can anybody guess? Guys, any guesses?
No, it will not execute a mother.
Yeah, because whenever there is an error in the try block, okay, it will go and directly execute the catch block. It will not go and execute this. Okay, so that's one thing that we need to remember. So whenever there is an error in a try block, it will go and execute the catch block, and then it will go beyond this. Okay, so guys, do you understand so far, or do you want me to give any other example so that you can relate it more? Can you understand what I'm speaking now? Yeah, so let's take an example from here. Okay, let's forget, let's not worry about these code. Okay, bunch of code here. What I'm going to do is I'll comment all these things. We are trying to launch the Amazon site, and we are trying to find about us. Okay, but let's say you are giving invalid locator. Then what happens is you cannot find this locator. Okay, so it will obviously throw the element. But this particular thing is not really important for us. Let's say if this is not present, that's okay. Okay, we want to move ahead. Okay, maybe we want to assert something in the amazon.m. Okay, maybe we want to check whether this logo is there. Okay, maybe something that is not really important for us. Okay, and we are trying to fetch that, and if it is not present, we want to continue with the program instead of stopping this. Let's say if I try to run this now, I'm trying to find an element that doesn't even exist. Okay, let's see what's happening. So this has thrown error. So it's telling, hey, you were trying to find an element and we got no such element exception. There is no such element with the locator that you have mentioned. But this is really not important, because in real time, okay, let's assume that this is not a mandatory field. Okay, maybe for some user it will be displayed, for some user it will not be displayed. This can be a real time scenario, right? In test automation, right? Maybe for managers it will be displayed, for common users it will not be displayed. Okay, so this is not really a mandatory field. Okay, if it is present, you do some operation. If it is not present, you want to move ahead. Okay, in those cases, what you can do, this will throw error, right? So what you can do, you can wrap this. You are guessing this may be present sometimes. Okay, try. I'm trying to tell program, hey, this is a code you need to be really cautious about, because this may cause some kind of exception. In our case, it has caused no such element exception. Let's copy this and catch. Okay, if there is something called as no such element exception that is coming from org.openqa.selenium. Okay, if there is such exception, you don't do anything. Okay, just tell um, about as is not present, it is not important for me. So moving ahead, right? Okay, this is not really important for me. You go ahead and find the careers page and then you click on the careers page. Okay, this is not really important for me. So now let's see what's happening. See, it has now clicked the careers page, right? So whatever. So if you notice, about is not present. It is not important for me. So see again, guys, I'm just adding the sysout statements, but here you can add anything. Okay, it is not really sysout statements that you have to add. You can give anything here. Okay, you can call some other stuff, or maybe you want to click on something else. You know, all these things. Okay, the catch block is where what kind of recovery you want to do. Okay, there is an error. To avoid that, I want to recover it. Okay, what kind of recovery mechanism you want to do? Here I'm just logging it in the console and then letting the user know that there is something like this happened. But if you want to do something else, you want to add some value to the database, maybe you can make a call from here. Okay, so the catch blocks are basically where you want to write the recovering code. Okay, good. So this is how we can correlate in the real time. Got it?
So Amuthan, it means we need to figure it out, right? That this code can cause the exception, or and we need to handle it, right?
So it's not like every code I have just mentioned like this, but how often you will get an error. So normally this code, you will not write a wrong expert, correct? You would have verified in developers console, everything would have done. So
Yes.
this is not everyday task. Okay, this is not going to happen every day. But if there is a checked exception that you want to recover, maybe at the time you want to do it. Okay, so when you, so here in clearly, if you notice, when you are trying to do let's say this a equal to 5, b equal to 1, instead of hard coding here, we used a scanner class to get the values from the user. Okay, so at the time we are not sure whether they will give b value as 0. Okay, if they are giving b value as 0, then there will be a arithmetic exception in this case. Okay, then what we can do, we can basically tell, okay, while you try to divide two numbers, okay, what kind of exception can happen, guys? What kind of exception can happen?
Arithmetic.
Arithmetic exception.
Yes, arithmetic exception can happen. And this arithmetic exception, if happens, what I can do, I can again ask the user to enter the values and then try to do the dividing operations again. Okay, so maybe I can tell s out enter b value, again, don't enter 0. Okay, something like this. Okay, and then again I will ask them for the input. Okay, so you know how to do the scanner class input and get the values. So now this time, once I again I give them the option, I will again use scanner input, right, dot next and all that, we'll get the values again and we will do again the divide operation. Okay, so that's how we can get recovery. Okay, so again,
Okay.
it's not that every time you'll have only one exception. Okay, there are cases where there will be multiple exception that can happen. Okay, for example, uh, let's remove all these things. Little uneasy here. So let's remove all this and we'll go back to the same basics. Let's say this is int a equal to 3, whatever, and here I write a try block and then I mention a by p, whatever. And there is also one more thing I have, int array c equal to 1 comma 2, and I'm also trying to print c of 2, right? And see, now I have written two statements inside my try block and two of them can also cause exceptions, correct? Yes or
Yes.
no? Okay. Yes. So in those cases, what are those two exceptions?
This arithmetic exception
One.
Okay.
and
Array index out of bound.
Okay. Arithmetic, but this is arithmetic. So this catch block will be executed whenever there is an arithmetic exception. Okay. Then there is also one more catch block we can write, and this is for array index out of bound. Guys, whenever you're typing this, okay, you know array index out of bound exception, right? But instead of typing array fully like this, array index out of bound, all that, see, you can type first letter of each thing. Okay, so A, and then the next first thing is I, capital letter is O, right? So what you can do, A, I, O. So if you notice, when I type A, I, O, which means array index out of, so it actually understand what you are trying to type. Okay, so you can type like this. Okay, so this way you are not typing a lot of code. Okay, maybe just with this, okay, you can choose this. Okay, so this is an easy trick in IntelliJ where you can type the uppercase letters in of the first word, so that you can easily get from a list of options. Okay, so yeah, when there is an array index out of bound exception that is happening, what I want to do, I want to do something, uh, I am array index exception. Okay, something like this, and here I will tell yes out, I am arithmetic exception. Okay, so this is what cool, right? So now let's say, can anyone predict what will be the output?
I am arithmetic exception.
Okay, why this array index out of bound exception is not there?
Because next line number 21 will not be executed.
Okay, let's see what's happening. So I think I have already defined EA, so let's put it as E here, sorry, E. Okay, let's try to run it. See, we have only got arithmetic exception because, right, as he told, right, we are trying to divide a number by B, and then this particular statement has an error, so it now finds, okay, which catch block is more suitable. This catch block will only accept, okay, arithmetic exception. So it checks, okay, I also have arithmetic exception, so I need to enter this particular block, and then it execute this piece of code. Now let's do some tweaking. Let me change this to 2, and let's see what is the error, what is the output of this particular program. Anyone, what is the error output?
array index output.
Okay, so yeah, so now the first line of 20th line doesn't have any error. Okay, it is not that it has to always throw error. So now it has divided A by B and it has printed. See, 3 by 2 is 1.5, but we have stored, we have divided the int. So it basically wrap, uh, 1.5 is basically a decimal. So by default it will do the conversion to int. Okay, it will typecast or downcast to integer, and it will print the value. So if you want to get 1.5, you need to store it in some kind of double, and then you need to divide it. Okay, this is okay. Now the C of 2, when I try to access this, that's where the problem now occurs, and then we are handling it like this. Instead of these two things, what I can also do, okay, I can basically tell catch, and then I can put exception E. Now yes out some problem. Okay, and then if I try to run the program again, okay, this time whatever the error is there, it will just tell some problem. Okay, some problem. Okay, it doesn't know what is the problem, but some problem. Okay, so this is how it is, guys. Okay, so the exception is a super class, it's a parent class, it's a parent class for all the other exceptions. Okay, so whenever there is an exception happening, you can be more specific about what is the exception, and sometimes you can wrap all of them together into a bigger exception like this. Okay, imagine, let's say I will open a paint again. So let's assume you have apples and oranges and all that. So let's say you have a bunch of apples, you have a bunch of oranges, right? And you have buckets, okay, different buckets. Let's assume this is a bucket, okay. This is a bucket that can hold only apples, okay. This is a bucket that can hold only oranges. This is a bucket that can hold either of apples or oranges, okay, any of these things. So it's the your arithmetic exception, guys, okay. Whenever there is an apple, you put it here so that you know what is happening, okay. This is like arithmetic exception. You are using a very specific exception to handle things. But in oranges, you are putting oranges so that you know how you are handling it. But sometimes you don't want to really bother about whether it is apple or orange. You want to sell all of them together, so you wrap all of these into the exception block, okay. So that's how it is. So exception is the parent class, and then it can hold any of the child exceptions, so you don't have to really worry about what to do. So coming back to the previous example that I gave, when you are going to a bank and you are trying to withdraw some amount, some people doesn't even code them properly. That's why it will tell, hey, something went wrong, please try again. Okay, have you been to ATM and have faced this issue? Because the developers doesn't do proper exception handling. Okay, if you are doing proper exception handling, they would have separated this into multiple flash blocks. Okay, like denomination not available exception. Okay, or invalid, not enough amount in your bank account exception, invalid password exception. Okay, something like this. Okay, so they would have given you clearly what kind of exception it is, and so that you can fix them easily. Okay, if you just tell something went wrong, what the user will do? Okay, he doesn't even know what kind of exception it is. Okay, there are thousands of cases that there is an exception while trying to withdraw an amount from a bank. Maybe the bank would not have money, maybe there would be a network interruption, maybe this guy has already exceeded the maximum limit for the day, maybe this guy has exceeded the maximum number of withdrawals for the day. You need to be really specific on what kind of error you want to show, and then you can handle with multiple catch blocks. Okay, sometimes you want to do all these things, that's fine, but at the end of the day, you can have something called as finally, and this finally block will get executed even though if there is an exception or not. What I want to do, uh, thank you for visiting us, okay, thank you for visiting us, okay, something like this. And then we want to wish them good luck, right? Whenever there is an exception or not, it doesn't matter. Okay, we want to just wish them or tell them thank you for visiting us, or maybe we want to showcase our promotion. Okay, if you open a account with us, you can get only you know personal loans at 5% interest, whatever. So this finally block is something like this. Okay, this is used for cleanup. Okay, so you want to do some kind of cleanup, okay, you can do that. Okay, something like this. Okay, so here, so again, a summary, a try block is where you can indicate to Java that there may be a possible case of errors occurring here. Okay, errors, possibilities. Okay, there may be possibilities of errors occurring here. Okay, occurring, occurring, typos. Occurring.
Muthan, is it a good practice to keep driver.quit line statement in the family block?
Yes, whatever happens, you quit it here. Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So and then the catch blocks are way of recovering. How you want to recover, recovering from errors. How you want to recover, and if you use multiple catch blocks, okay. So these multiple catch blocks will help you to distinguish between different errors, and you can streamline what kind of error recovery mechanisms you want to do for different types of error. When there is an array index of the bound, you want to handle it differently. When there is this one, you want to handle it differently. So multiple catch blocks can be used to be more specific about your error handling mechanisms. Okay, but if you don't want to do all these things, maybe a catch block with the exception that can help you out. Okay, and let's say, again, finally, is for cleanup. Okay, if you want to do some, suppose let's say you are reading something from a database, okay, you are getting some error and all that, but that doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, I want to close the connection that I have established with my database. Okay, something like this. Okay, all these things we can do with the finally block. Again, there is one important question: what is finally and what is final? Okay, we have already seen what is final. Can anyone tell what is final? Final
Final
keyword.
means we cannot change the class or methods in child class.
No, no, no. I want to be really specific. Whenever you're giving answers, right, you need to be really bang on target. Okay, this is the
Amutan,
exact.
finally we can declare class as a final, variable as a final, and method as a final. If we are declaring class as a final, then we cannot extend it.
Okay,
If we are declaring method as a final, we cannot override it in child class. And if we are declaring variable as a final, then we cannot change it. It will be completely constant for the complete execution.
exactly. So you have to be like this. Okay, so be very specific about your answers so that you people understand what you are speaking and you understand what you're speaking. Okay, it's not that you have to understand, you need to make sure that the other person also understanding what you're telling. So very clear. Okay, we use final with all the three different entities called classes, methods and variables. When we don't want someone to extend a class, we make it as a class as final so that nobody can extend it. We make a method as a final so that nobody can override in the child classes. Again, we make a variable as a final so that it becomes a constant, and the value remains unchanged throughout the whole program. Nobody can change it. For example, we can use pi, the math pi 3.14 value as a constant because it's going to remain constant throughout. So there is no reason why we want to keep it as non-final. So you can also add some examples that I have provided so that people really understand what you're speaking about. Okay, so you just need to answer one question in a proper way to fetch a job. Okay, it's not that you have to answer all the questions. So this is not really possible, right? So yeah, so they may ask you what is the difference between finally as well, finally and final. Okay, now you can tell finally is pretty commonly used with your try catch blocks and used for cleaning up of all these resources and all that. So whatever, wherever there is an exception happening here or exception not happening here, it doesn't really matter. So there is no exception now happening, but still it'll execute the finally block. Okay, so if you notice, there is no exception here, but still this finally block is getting executed because this is finally block and not catch block. Catch blocks will only get executed if there is actually a problem inside the try block. Okay, otherwise it won't get executed. Okay, good. So
Then
this,
I just
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I have a doubt. Like in the try block, you have two operations, right? So if the first operation fails and if the catch gives an error, is it a way to go to the second operation, the try block, or we have to put it in two try blocks? So go to each operation.
yeah. If you want to execute all those second block, then you have to put this separately. Okay, you can take this out. Okay, you can write another try block and then you can execute this like this, and you can have a catch block again that actually provide the implementation for this. Okay, you can provide something like this. Okay, so if there is an error here, it'll execute this. If there is an error here, it will execute this. But this is not really going to happen in real time, so you don't have to really worry about it. We will see how we can effectively handle this. But sometimes you don't write these try catch blocks, don't write these type try catch blocks unnecessarily. Okay, let's say people will do what they will do, they will write try catch for everything. Okay, don't do this. Okay, if something, okay, let's say you are trying to go here, you are validating amazon.in. If you put this in a try catch block, the program will move on further. But we don't want to do that. If the amazon.in button is not there, let it fail, let it fail, and then you come to know that there is a failure, then so that your test fails and indicates that actual failure. So don't use the try catch block unnecessarily. We will see more about exception handling uh, during our framework creation. Okay, so for now, just understand that what is the use of try catch. If you don't want to provide any default implementation also, that's fine. Okay, it's not mandatory that you have to provide try catch blocks for runtime exceptions. Okay, Only for checked exceptions, you have to either throw it through the method signature. Let's say I'm doing thread dot sleep, okay, and then 2000 or 200, whatever. So when you're doing this, now this is asking either handle it with the try catch or add exception to the method signature. I'll do this because this is a checked exception. I have to somehow handle it. This is an unchecked exception A by B, so I don't really have to handle it. Okay, here I am throwing it to the method. What does this mean? Throws this, which means I don't know how to handle this. Hey method, you give it back to people who called you. Okay, let's assume this whole thing is happening inside a main block and not inside a. I'll give you some good example. Okay, let's say you're having a main method, right? And then you have something called as uh, divide, and this divide is accepting two numbers. Okay, I pass two numbers, and let me also create this method. Okay, and int is this is int uh, j, maybe something else. Okay, and someone passing me this, I will do I by j. Okay, now let's move this code, or let's comment out this whole code. Now I have a main method. I'm trying to call a divide method here. I'm trying to do divide, I by j, whatever. Or maybe instead of this, maybe you're also using thread dot sleep. Okay, thread dot sleep. And if you notice, this time this method is the one that is causing this. This method is what causing problems. Now I don't know how to handle this. Then what you can do, you can basically add the exception to the method signature, which means who is calling this? This method is called by this guy. Okay, it will throw to this particular caller method. So now the main method had to handle this. This guy also doesn't know what to do. Okay, so in this case, he can again throw this back to the JVM. So who is calling the main method? JVM is calling the main method. I don't know. There is some kind of exception that is happening. I don't know what to do. You take it to, so let's say you are a tester. There is some kind of problem in your application. What do? You take it to your test lead. Your test lead thinks, okay, this is not something that is I can solve, so I'll just pass it on to the test manager. So nobody is ready to accept it. So we'll pass it back to the CEO. Okay, so CEO is your JVM. So that's how it is. Okay, we don't know what to handle. Hey JVM, you handle it your own way. Okay, we don't really want to interrupt here. But let's say your manager has a solution for this problem and he wants to provide a solution for this, and he can add a try block here. Okay, and then he can use catch blocks with arithmetic exception, and then he can handle it. Okay, so again, sorry, this is an let's say this is interrupted exception. Okay. When you are using thread.strip, you'll get interrupted exception. Okay, so now he knows what to do and he's handling this here. Okay, so when to throw, when to do try catch. Okay, let's understand again. So there are two statements here. This can cause interrupted exception. Okay, interrupted exception. This can cause arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception. Okay, there are two things. Okay, now there are two ways you can handle it. Either if your divide method, let's say this is your tester is really smart. Okay, he knows what to do. He will handle it himself. Okay, but he don't know what to do. In that case, he this guy can handle it for you. For example, let's also have one more method. Let's say that particular method is let's say some method. Okay, whatever, I don't know what it is, but yeah, it is just some kind of method that we have that is also having thread.sleep. This is having interrupted exception. Okay, so there are two child methods. Okay, this guy is also calling. Let's remove this. Divide 3 comma 0, and then we also have some method call. Okay, now both of these methods are throwing interrupted exception. Okay, both of these calls. So what you can do, since this method is okay, both these methods are throwing interpreted exception. If I handle it here, if I put a try catch block here, I need to handle it, and provide different implementation. But what I can do, I can throw the exception here. I can again throw the exception here. Okay. Here I can handle it, because in both the case, whenever there is a exception, that is interpreted exception happening, I want to handle it here itself. Okay, so that I can provide one single implementation for two of them. Okay, whether the interpreted exception happening here or here, that doesn't really matter. I will handle them the same way. So you need to think when you want to throw the exception, when you want to do the try catch. Okay, here I can do the try catch here, because I don't want to throw this, or this is this is an unhandled or unchecked exception, so you can provide your try catch here. Okay, this is a very specific exception that is happening, right? So you can handle it here instead of passing to your manager. Okay. Again, I can put some exception, something like this, and then do it. Okay. So guys, if you feel really complicated, okay, just to throw the exception. Okay, whenever there is an exception, just to throw it to the caller method. Don't use try catch block. That is one of the best way to handle exceptions. Okay. To summarize, let's go to one particular image that I have downloaded from internet. Okay. Okay, I hope this is readable, but yeah, just adjust, guys. This is all I could find. Let's say we have a class called throwable in Java. Okay, it contains two things. One is exception, one is error. Okay, error is something we cannot do anything. Okay, let's say you get stack overflow error or out of memory error. Okay, this general we cannot do. Suppose let's say your machine is not having enough memory to run your Java program. Okay, then it will throw out of memory error, but we cannot do anything about it, right? So this is not in our control, but there are something that is in our control, that is exception. So exception class is a super class of all the exception. Okay, all the parent exceptions comes under this exception class. Okay, and exception class and error both extends the throwable class. Good. Now in exception we have two kinds of exception. As you know, one is checked exception, one is unchecked exception. For example, the IO exception, the SQL exception, the interrupted exception, are all checked exception. These are all checked exception. We also have one more subtype, that is runtime exception. Inside that we have multiple things. So we have arithmetic exception, that happens when you try to divide a number by zero. Null pointer exception, when you try to access something that is null. Number format exception will happen when you try to convert a string, when you have a string but you want to do division on that. Okay, then you'll get all this kind of error. Index out of bound have multiple things. Okay, maybe array index out of bound exception is there, string index out of bound exception is also there. So all these things are runtime exception. Runtime exceptions, if you cannot predict, there is going to be some problems. Okay, only during the runtime you can predict. But checked exception is something Java can understand and predict, and it will raise a red flag before you start executing your program. Without you handle your checked exception, it will not allow you to execute your program. Okay, so that's the summary about exception handling. If you don't know any of these, all these days you don't know these things, right? You have still worked on Selenium, so don't worry about if you don't know any of these. At least some part of it you might understand, maybe the bank example that what I have given. So that is more than enough for now. Okay, we'll understand more while we deep dive into the framework development. Okay, any other doubts, guys?
No, Amuchan, we'll go through this. We'll go through this recording, and if there is any doubt, then surely we'll ask you.
Sure, guys. Okay, and most importantly, again, we will not have class tomorrow. I have some personal work. I might be traveling, so we'll not have class tomorrow. We'll all have take rest, and then we'll again connect back on Tuesday. Okay.